March 22nd Ways and Means meeting. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do we have any public participation? I'm not seeing anyone. So we'll move on to our first budget here, which is the assessors. Come on up, Paul. We have Paul Tierney with us, the town assessor. And does the subcommittee have a report, Frank?
Yes, sir, we do.
This is budget 141.
All right, give me a split second to wheel all this out. All right, so we're on budget 141. The budget is as published in your book. It's for a total of $877,000. It's a 1.6% increase, and the subcommittee did approve it 200. A couple of small notes. It's pretty straightforward because over the past couple of years now, we've sort of for people that have been here prior, there have been some changes in the department, and we've got that all sorted out and settled down. Paul is on board as a full-time assessor, and we split up the responsibilities for commercial and residential assessment support between the contractor for the residential side, which is Patriot Partners, and you'll see that in the budget. And we have the former assessor on as a part-time consultant doing the commercial side. And that's in here for contracted services, and that's an ongoing thing. It's within budget and no increases at all. The only point I make is that Paul's salary, he's in the administrative and professional group, so we all know, most of us do. The A&P group is negotiated annually for its contract, and that increase is not reflected in this budget. But all the monies for that will come out of the negotiated settlement, so we don't expect anything aberrant. And even if you calculated everything with that included, it would still be well under the guideline. I will point out, we have money in here for GIS work, and we use, there's a GIS service that they use extensively, and they budget for that for support, both the software and the service, and that's in this budget as well. It's a repeat. We're trying to consolidate all the GIS work. So there's really nothing unusual about this from a year-to-year point of view. That's really all I have to say. I'm sure Paul would be glad to take any questions as well.
Paul, would you like to add anything to that?
I think Frank covered most of it, covered everything actually. There's really no increases. Anything that was an increase was just due to contractual. All the expenses stayed the same. So there's really not a whole lot to add other than what Frank already mentioned.
Okay. Any questions?
I hate to be picky, so the mapping services amount actually went down. It's pretty unusual.
We just moved a little bit towards our MELT account because I'll be using that for inspections and being reimbursed for travel. And conferences are starting up again, so we just kind of moved the money around a little bit.
All right.
But we feel we have enough coverage to do the mapping as well still.
Good. And then a second question, does the Patriot annual contract, it seems like that would be level.
5 years.
Is it a multi-year contract?
I think we're in the second of a 5-year.
Yes, we're covered until 2020.
Yeah, I meant to say that.
All right, great, thanks.
Did you have something, Brad? No. I'm curious, have we seen any issue with the commercial assessments due to the pandemic and all the vacancy issues and so on?
No, not at all. We've just gone by a steady increase, just like residential, and there's been no issues at all with the businesses. They haven't come at us any complaints, so everything's pretty much standard.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Move to approve?
Second.
Thank you. Okay. This is for
Thank you, Paul.
$480,877.
Correct.
Yep, excellent. All right, Roger,
Yes.
Ed. Yes. Megan,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Chris Delaney,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 10-0-0. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the building inspector, which is budget 241. Does the subcommittee have a report, Brad?
Yes, we do.
Excellent.
Budget is straightforward. There is a contractual increase in salaries. There's a $500 increase in the cost of printing, I'm sorry, a $450 increase in printing supplies and services. And again, all the mapping and printing, the printing of maps and such that they do is important. Otherwise, the budget is level funded. The budget request is for $724,620. That's an increase of $25,089 or 3.59%. Megan and I voted 2-0 in support.
All right, and we have Mark Capello, the building inspector, with us. Would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think it's pretty much covered. Thank you.
Mr.
Oh,
Chairman,
But my side partner here has something to say.
Would the town administrator like to add something?
I just would like to just remind the committee that this is one of the departments, when we got hit with COVID at the beginning, that we reduced by one inspector. The staff's been doing a great job of trying to keep things going, but it was requested and cut again this year. Mark felt that they could do without it, but we just want to keep it on your radar screen that as building keeps ramping up, and it's very, very, very busy right now. We may need to request that to be reinstated in the future.
Okay.
Just wanted to keep it on everybody's radar screen.
And I did see it's in here with a cross out, so good way to keep a placeholder. Brad?
And just to add some sympathy to their situation, they do have 3 inspector positions, but only 2 are filled at the moment, so that much more on their workload.
Okay, staying very busy then. Anything else? Roger?
Let's see, so just looking at page 2 of the budget, there's a subtotal under the salaries. And it looks like the math is wrong because where it says down at the bottom, there's a TA cut. It says minus 89,000 something. But then the subtotal below that is higher. And it also doesn't match the number on the first page of the full-time salaries. So I think the sign is just inverted on that 89,000.
That would be interesting.
Or maybe that number just doesn't have any meaning because,
Or is that 813 what it was before the cut, and you have to look at it in reverse?
Yeah,
that's probably.
subtract, but that doesn't work either.
I think it does if you look at it that way.
Well, the
That's if
723,
it was added.
515 matches the top, so that part's fine.
Yeah, the 723 plus the 48 would give to 771, and the 813 is what the total would have been had there not been a cut, is what I'm interpreting. And then that's carried up properly to here? Yeah.
Second question, there's a transfer from 2023 of 12,333. Can you remind me what that was?
That was, it's in the
Negotiated
full-time
settlements.
salaries. That's the transfer in from negotiated settlements for the A&P contract and the,
Okay, that was done, the adjustment from last year?
in the current year.
Right, sorry, current year.
Yes.
Okay.
Ac-
And-
Actually, Roger, I'm going to go back to that. I'm not sure the total is carried up properly to the cover page.
And you need to come up with the
681
681, 647.
on the cover page, and
Doesn't
that
tie.
doesn't agree with the breakdown.
All right, yeah,
No matter what you do with the 89,000.
So you were right.
I wasn't picking on the cover page, but,
So which total is the right one is the obvious question.
We'll take the 813.
That wasn't one of the choices.
Where do you see the vote?
I think it's between the 771, which is all consistent on that page,
24,620.
or the 681, which is on the cover page. Which is,
Now I'm lost because I don't see that number at all.
oh, you don't see the 681?
Total salary.
Total salaries.
I see it under
Which
total salary.
interestingly is about 90K lower than the other subtotals. So I'm
So-
wondering if it got subtracted twice, perhaps?
Yes. So, yeah, from the Department of Supervisory, right, it got subtracted that position got subtracted a second time. So.
Yes, I think it got double subtracted as exact.
So I believe, Whitney, could you verify, but the correct number should be the 814,488?
814,488 is the department request before the cut.
I must have an old version.
That's,
Yeah. Oh, the one I have is from 224.
What's the date on the one you're using?
minus two.
Apparently,
There's
with
a-
all the changes, it's today's
There's
date.
this random number here that's like in the wrong place, but it looks to me like it's totaling up, so it's totaled up to this. We took out this. It's the 633 number.
Glad you asked, Roger.
And it's here. And then,
It'd be down to 0 inspectors with the way this is going.
We can't afford that.
I see the random.
We're gonna need them.
The cover sheet's right though, and the percentage is right.
Yeah, I didn't hear the beginning of that conversation, but I'm not seeing where, there's a rogue number. in the
So,
salary page.
so this full-time sum of 723, right, is not right. If you add it up, it does match the supervisory, so,
The supervisor is listed as supervisory 2023. At the top.
right, another typo. Yeah,
I'm guessing the full-time grid of 723,515 with the cut is the only right number.
no,
Guys, who's got it?
Cut.
The 723 is pre-cut.
Is
and we
pre-cut.
cut the 89, total 633.
right,
Okay.
47, which is what's on the summary page.
Right.
So there's a rogue 813 number on the salary page that doesn't belong there.
So you're saying the 723 was before the cut then?
723 is before the cut, then
Ah.
we took out the 89, so the total is 633, 647 for full-time, 48,000 part-time, totals up to, should be what it says on the summary page, the
720.
681,
647.
647.
Okay,
Yeah, okay.
so the 813 thing is what's bogus.
Okay, so that was,
It's just a rogue number in the spreadsheet.
that was a red herring there, okay. All right, and so the total on the cover page, or summary page is the correct one?
Correct.
Yes. All right, so we like the 724, 620 total, is that still good?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right,
So everyone,
So what it comes down to is if he didn't cut my inspector, we wouldn't have had this conversation.
I can't wait to hear Roger's second question.
oh, I think I probably already know the answer to the second question is, did you spend all the overtime? Or have you spent it? Do you expect to spend all
We won't spend all of it, but we'll use most of it.
Okay. I didn't know if 48,000 was enough, but, all right, good to know.
It's enough for this week.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the
Oh,
update.
thank you.
Yeah, glad we double checked.
Motion to approve it.
Second,
As amended, I was gonna say, with the correct number.
second.
Thank you. All right.
It's not actually
There-
amended.
Any further questions, just before we go,
Road
just to make
numbers.
sure? Okay, great.
Good eye.
All righty. All right, so just to be clear, this is for 724,620. Roger?
Yes.
Ed? Yes. Megan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Frank?
Absolutely.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Brad?
yes,
Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 10-0-0. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
Sorry to cause a panic. All right, our next budget is MIS, which is account 155. Does the subcommittee have a report, Brad?
Yes.
Excellent.
So, well, I'm going to get seated here. I'll go ahead and start. There's a small increase in salaries purely from steps. There are some increases in network and web service subscriptions. Note that under network and web services, the last line here, collaboration software WebEx, that represents the town's WebEx license fees. The decision was made to apply ARPA funds toward that in the amount of $10,800. I believe this is at least the second year you guys have done that?
Third, I think.
The third, all right. And, but eventually it will wind back up in this budget. Let's see, so the subcommittee voted on a request of 769,926. But when we, in the course of the discussion, it turned out that a vendor had given the town a price in January, actually had given Amy Warfield a price in January, and the week before the budget was discussed, they sent Amy another amount. So it went from 14,260 to 15,547, which does appear to be the cost. So Whitney has adjusted the budget. So while the subcommittee voted on a different number, we're still in support of even that delta without having taken a vote. But the number we're actually voting on today, and I believe John sent out the updated cover sheet for MIS this past week. So this number should be $771,213, an increase of $16,897 or 2.24%. And again, subcommittee voted 2-0 to support the general.
They're really close to the right number budget.
Thank you. Well put.
Excellent. Okay, we have Jose D'Souza and Joe Bongiorno with us today. Would you guys like to add anything to that?
No.
Okay. Any questions for MIS? Ed?
I just want to clarify that the WebEx is being paid for from the American Rescue Plan Act as opposed to the Defense Advanced Research Project.
Exactly.
Okay, very good.
Steve?
The question's more to the town administrator, but could you give us an update on the ARPA funds and where we're at with those?
Certainly. Do you want to just wrap this budget up first?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. I had a question. So I know you're using part of your time for the cybersecurity and then backfilling with a part-time person. Have you actually been able to fill that part-time person?
We haven't filled it yet. We have we have a vendor come in to look at different options, and then based on how the assessment comes out, then we'll decide what would be the best way to use those funds.
Okay, yeah, I know there's some concern whether you'd be able to fill it as a part-time role. Okay. Any other questions?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All right, just to be clear, this is for $771,213. Roger?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Steve?
Why not?
Frank? We'll take that as a yes.
Yes.
Crystal Haney?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 10-0-0. And then related is the accommodated account for capital improvements. This shows up in other accounts in your budget books.
So for those of us who've been on the committee for a while, we've seen this multiple times. This is actually the fourth year of a 5-year plan consisting of an almost, well, almost $1.5 million expense to improve network hardware access across the town, and around $500,000 expense toward improving network security. The work on the hardware was completed 2 years ago now, and the network security improvements, I assume, presumably are ongoing. The town is being billed $400,000 per year as part of a 5-year zero-interest loan from the provider. And again, there's a full-up presentation that's been made in past years, but given that this is the 4th time around and we're paying for services already rendered, they're available to ask questions. We're planning on doing a full presentation this evening, but the subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Would you like to add anything to that?
No, really.
Any questions?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Actually, I'm curious, has everything actually been done already, or is
Yes.
there still some incremental work to be done?
All the work has been done, and we just using the equipment and the software right now.
Okay, great. All right, moving on to vote. This is for 400,000.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, yes, sir.
I just, the bells reminded me. So presumably we're going to do another go-round in another year. How early do you start plans on
Correct.
the next go-round?
Yeah, the plan is to have another plan for the next 5 years. But we'll probably gonna do that during the year that this is gonna be expiring.
Okay, thank you.
Have Lovely and Bell there. All right. Okay, so for 400,000, Roger,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Crystalini,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Oh, yeah, no, yes. Okay, that's 10-0-0. Wanted to make sure I hadn't forgotten someone. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys, thank you, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Stay secure.
All right. Next up is,
ARPA update?
I was going to suggest we defer that to the end, just
Fine.
because I believe you're going to be here a while, and
Yep.
that way we'll get
Okay.
through everyone else.
That works.
Thanks.
Okay. So sealer weights and measures, are you covering that, Paul? Or?
I'm here to answer questions.
Excellent, okay. That's budget 244. And is there a subcommittee report, Brad?
There is. We held the meeting at 6:45, so hot off the presses here. Again, for those of you who've been around for a while, the way we've funded a sealer of weights and measures position, it's been an employee of the state for a number of years. Each year, the budget request it costs about $15,000 a year for that service. We have requisitioned $7,500 in the budget each year and paid the other half out of revolving funds. The state rather precipitously pulled that service. So congratulations to the administration for scrambling and finding a backup plan, because this is a service we do need to provide. So we've gone in and paired with Lexington for a sealer of weights and measures who, the split on the cost, we're picking up 40% to 60% to Lexington's 40%. There is going to be a one-time expense on equipment, and there are additional costs that are a bit higher than what we'd had to pay before, but the request this year is for $16,848. I asked why we weren't paying for at least $7,500 of that out of revolving. This $16,850 or so is a very, very rough estimate. We don't know how this thing is going to cost out. So they're going to keep the revolving accounts in the town's pocket for the moment in case we need to cover additional expenses as the year goes out. So this is a test year, and the person who was hired is fully qualified, so we should be fine in that regard, but we just have to figure out what ongoing expenses will be. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Thank you. would you like to add anything?
Mr. Chairman, I think Brad did a great job of covering it. It is a test year for us, so it's the first time we've tried doing it this way. The state pulled this contract rather abruptly and left quite a few cities and towns without a sealer of weights and measures. And again, you may not know, but there's not a lot of sealer of weights and measures qualified people out there.
I've never met one.
So it was pretty much a scramble between all the towns that was sort of booted out of the program to try to track down those few people. And through the efforts of Joanne and HR, we worked collaboratively with the town of Lexington, thinking that our hours combined would be more attractive to a sealer, and that worked out pretty good. We got a very qualified, it's a part-time, non-benefited position, approximately 60-40 split, and we calculated that based upon the number of devices that need to be sealed in each community. Seems like a pretty good split to me if you consider the difference between Burlington and Lexington, but I guess based upon the actual devices, that was a reasonable way to go. But, so we'll have a much better idea of what the ongoing costs of this service will be during next year's budget.
Great. Steve?
What are the expected expenses that the sealer awaits would submit in the course of the duties that the sealer will be doing?
The upfront cost obviously is equipment, and then we're thinking about travel reimbursement for using their own vehicle, those types of things.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, Paul, so it's a full-time person, 60% of which we pay the salary from our budget.
A
All right?
part-time person, 18 hours a week.
Oh, okay. I see. And we get 60% of the 18 hours?
Yes, it's
Oh,
I think
okay,
it's
that is-
approximately 11.
No, I don't need
7,
that detail. I didn't get the benefits piece. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheyenne?
Just, how to phrase this, is there a way to give like a I guess a stipend, like for travel expenses as you mentioned? And secondly, what exactly are the qualifications for sealer of weights and measures?
There's a state certification program, and I guess there's a lot of hands-on learning that goes on. These folks check the price scanners in the stores, they check the gas pumps, they check any place that has a scale. You know, think Wegmans deli counter, and a lot of the supermarkets have scales at the registers, so they're just making sure that all the devices that businesses are using to charge people are accurate.
Okay.
It's a very small pool of people that are familiar with it. In a smaller town, it could be a $4,000 a year job. We do have a significant commercial sector, obviously, what makes it a little bit more important that we do the service, but also that we get somebody who's really qualified. And like I say, I think we lucked out on this one. We got somebody that was working as an assistant director in a regional operation north of here, and I think we got pretty lucky. But the alternative would have been the state will give somebody a year to get their state certification and provide a little bit of training. So that was the alternative if we weren't able to hire somebody that had experience.
And a quick follow-up, how often are they tested, these?
Based upon the type of device, and I'm going off of memory here, but I believe the store scanners are every other year. So every other year, they're doing half the town 1 year, half the town the next year, and it's good for 2 years. But I think your actual scales and your gas pumps is an every year test. Okay. And we collect a fee from it, which goes into the revolving fund. And, you know, historically has been used to pay other costs of the program. But again, we're gonna ask the sealer to evaluate our fee structure. The select board did adjust the fees to fair market value probably like 6 or 7 years ago, but we're gonna take a look at that to make sure that we're recouping as much of the cost as we can. And again, once we get through a full year of travel, I think that may make sense. Some sort of travel stipend may actually make sense, once we have a better idea of what type of cost we're gonna incur in that area.
Okay. And how often are the sealers recertified?
Be certified?
Yeah.
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Roger?
I assume that when they are doing the checking, there's some sort of software system that the data goes into. Is that the same as the one the state was using, or is it one that?
I've seen it done a bunch of different ways in my career, anything from a triplicate notepad to, I think when we switched over to the state, they had some pretty fancy equipment and they were doing some additional testing, like on how much the octane of the gasoline and things of that nature. But in terms of, it's a pretty not very high-tech system, I would say. Even the invoices we got from the state were more or less a listing. Wegmans, 50 scales, these amount of scanners, and then we would bill off of that document to the actual customer.
All right.
It's not a real high-tech data collection system.
Are they gonna keep track of hours? Is the person gonna fill out time cards for?
It's really, it's structured as an hourly job, but it's really not. This is a job that, as long as all the devices get done every year, we're not really particular about what hours of work the person uses. If they hustle and get it done in 6 months. So the fee was based upon number of devices, which is how most towns would develop a stipend for the position. So we think we got the total right. And in our discussions with Lexington, the person would technically qualify as an employee. So they get a weekly check, but it's more like an annual allotment.
Okay, I just was trying to figure out how you're gonna judge whether, this is enough money and,
Like I say, it's typically calculated on the number of devices that the person will be working with on an annual basis.
but you're, okay. But seems like there's a lot of wiggle room between the number of money based on the part-time rates that you've allocated. I guess I don't quite, like you said, it's up to the efficiency of the individual inspector to figure out whether they get their money worth or whether they get their time off, so.
Well, I think it's more a case of if you really hustle, you're getting paid for less hours. If you drag it out too long, you're getting paid for less hours.
That's not how an hourly job works.
It's not an hourly job, so it's like I say, if we were gonna do it the way that we had envisioned it, it would be more like a summary contract, $16,000 a year. But because of the nature of independent contractors and whatnot, it was deemed to be a position that should be an employee, so we sort of had to build it in that way, come up with the total that we anticipated paying in a year, and then sort of break it up over a weekly paycheck.
Okay, good, I hope the testing period provides some useful data for next year.
Yep, I do as well.
Motion to approve?
I think we had a motion.
Rough
didn't we?
crowd tonight.
Second? I don't think we did.
We'll make sure. It's doubly moved now. All right, this is for 16,848.
Yes.
Thank you. Ed?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. That's 10-0-0. Thank you on that.
Thank you.
All right, next is veterans, which is budget 643. Do we have a subcommittee report, Brad?
Yes, certainly.
Mr. Chairman, it's 543.
543?
Yeah, veterans, 543.
Yeah, it is.
Yes. I'm sorry, I said something wrong probably. All right.
Again, this budget is straightforward. There's a contractual increase in salaries. There's a $1,350 increase in supplies for flags. It turns out that in past years, there were departments, if they needed flags in the process of the year for, I don't know, memorial services or whatever it was, what they would do is they'd buy the flags from the Veterans Office, and they'd use money in their line item in their own budget to pay the Veterans Office for the flags. So just to cut out the middleman, the decision was made to centralize that operation, so Veteran Services are buying all the flags for the town, and people will pick their flags up for what they need them for. So So, let's see, so it's been decided to centralize this. There's also a $300 increase in the Veterans Aid line. Again, for those of you who've been around the committee for a while, the Veterans Aid line varies from year to year, just as Amy's budget varies as a function of number of elections. This line item varies as a function of the eligible participants in town. Now, the state does reimburse 75% of the cost, but the initial outlay must be included in the town's budgets explicitly. So the budget request this year is for $283,962. That's an increase of $13,839, or 5.12%. The subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Thank you. And we have Christopher Hannafin, Veterans Agent, with us. Would you like to add anything to that?
Oh, I think Brad got it.
Excellent, okay. Do we have any questions? Roger?
Sorry, this is a little bit past tense, but under the spent for the current year, it's a negative number. That's kind of odd.
Which is why we're trying to streamline the process right now. Excuse me. That $486 is what has come back into the account for people purchasing flags.
Oh, okay.
So we're spending the money purchasing the flags, and then other departments have to go through the town to write us a check, and it seems kind of counterproductive and wasting people's time. So we figured just increase the budget outright, and then in that case, we can, like Brad said, cut out the middleman and not waste anybody's time.
Well, good, thank you. Move to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All right, this is for $283,962. Roger?
Yes.
Ed? Yes. Megan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Crystalini?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Excuse me. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 10-0-0. We now have disability access, account 590. Subcommittee report, Brad?
Yes, so there is an increase in the salary line item by contract. That raises it $43 up to the amount of $1,008, and that's a total of 4.46%. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Great. Would you like to add anything?
That is it.
Okay. Any questions on disability access?
Move to approve?
Second.
Thank you. Get back to my chart here. Roger?
Yes.
Ed? Yes. Megan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Crystalini?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 10-0-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next, we have central administration, which is account 149.
Right.
Do we have a subcommittee report on that, Frank?
Yes, we do. So there's a whole, you want to roll them out the way you've listed them on?
Yeah, let's do them in order, because we
Alright,
need
so-
to vote on each one.
Yeah, we have to vote these separately. So if you have the cover sheet info that was sent out, it's very helpful. It's online, and I guess it's printed somewhere. So for OPEB, all right, so there's a whole list of accommodated accounts. We have to vote them individually, and I'll go through them in order. So the first one on here is,
Actually, if you could just do the central administration operating budget first,
oh, okay.
which is the central supply and central
Right,
machines.
okay. Okay, so under operating budgets, there are two categories, the supply category and basically office equipment called central machine. And you have a lot of backup for all of that. On the supply side, it's really a catch-all for a bunch of things that have to do with you know, postage and materials and paper and that sort of thing for the entire town side. And that was level funded, $110,000. That amount seems to work pretty well. And so, you know, there's really no way to know if it's gonna be a little less or a little more, but it basically consolidates all of that material and all those expenses. And it's taken care of through really, I think, the selectman's office manages that material. So it's not a, you know, go into the cabinet and take whatever you want. You know, you sort of have to make your presence known and your need known, and things are made available as needed. It is a fairly significant amount of money, but it's for everything. And the central machines is actually, it's extremely well organized, but it's a pretty complicated list. We've got a pile of equipment that is listed for you on this one document. And there's a sort of a mixture of owned machines and leased machines. And we've been migrating, I would say, between those categories. We buy them when it makes sense to buy them. So if a lease is up, a machine's aged out, if it makes sense to make a direct purchase and own the machine, we do. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I'd say in the bigger machines, it may not, but however, it turns out they try to maximize the use of our money. And what you can see here is that they're throughout the town, really, except for the school side. They're everywhere, from, you know, Vinebrook all the way to the assessor's office. The cost of these is broken out for us, and so on a leased machine, there's a monthly fee. Some of them come with a fee for toners, if it's black and white or color. Those are listed as a flat fee in the middle two columns, and then it's all tallied up. The one exception, for one detail that someone picked up, is the mail machine is actually listed as a monthly fee of $840. It's actually $280. That's the quarterly number. But if you add all this up, you come up with this grand total of $19,000. And then we have an umbrella policy, and I believe that's for sort of an umbrella maintenance policy for all of the equipment that can be covered that way. And that saves us quite a bit of, you know, call up and get a machine fix or spot service. So it's a $28,000 budget, and it's actually no increase at all. I don't know where the .29 came from, but it's a tiny increase.
That's just one of the machines is a touch higher than it was, we replaced it, and it was a touch higher than it was last year.
Okay, thank you. And so the total budget is $138,000, and it's a 0.06% increase. The subcommittee voted 2-0 in favor.
Administration like to add anything to that?
I would just like to say that these two items have been level funded for many years, and the committee has always seemed to want to have a large discussion about coffee machines. At least every other year since I've been working here.
Which year is this?
Are we on or off this year?
I would like to say that, yes, our intention is to get all these machines on a lease where we're dealing with monthly payments, but as luck would have it, occasionally when it comes time for a new one, they'll come in and say, hey, you'd be crazy not to hold on to this one, so we end up owning some of them. But our intention is always to get these all on a monthly payment type of thing, but sometimes we can be a sucker for a good deal, and that's why we still own some of them. So, but again, just wanted to make the comment that we have talked about coffee as many times over the years.
We'd like to keep it interesting. I forgot to mention we have Whitney Haskell-Jewison with us also, our budget director. Do we have any questions for?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So, when these machines reach the end of their life expectancy, so to speak, do we sell them, like, or is there like a plan for?
Typically, when we don't want it anymore, it's probably not going to be usable somewhere else, but we do at least attempt to auction off. There's a website called Municibid, which is a municipal auction site. So if we have really any item that may have a residual value that someone else in town doesn't have a use for, we will try to auction that off.
Okay. Thank you.
Roger.
Try not to dive too deep. I noticed there's a couple of different price ranges for machines. I assume that a few of these are very highly capable machines, and that's why the prices considerably higher?
Yes, some are more advanced machines, and some are older machines that were leased at a lower rate that are still functioning, so we're not gonna upgrade yet until they bite the dust.
Thanks.
Couldn't think of a nice way to say it.
Probably asked in previous years, but I'll have to bring it up anyway, just for Paul. The building inspector has their own copier, plotter stuff, or
Yeah,
printers?
special for the scanners.
Is that some specialty item that it makes sense just to have over there? Okay, great.
Rec department did
Got
too
it.
for a long time. Yeah.
Frank?
Yeah, I think they have one for their brochures.
There was
or
one
something.
thing I failed to point out, I think it's fairly important. If you look at the breakdown on the central supplies, they gave us sort of 5 buckets here. So general office supplies, just call it pens and pencils, is $41,000. But the postage fee is $50,000, and that's a pretty significant amount of money out of this budget. If you look at all the postage that we do, it's postage is postage, right? And the other thing I wanted to point out is that the excise bill mailings, you might think that this is a lot of money that we're spending, but we bring in something like $4 million, I think, in excise taxes. So it's pretty cost effective.
Good return on stamps.
Real good return on stamps.
We should get more stamps.
No more cars.
Right.
That's all,
Didn't
thank
need
you.
more cars?
Yeah, more cars, registrations.
Any other comments?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All right, so this is for central administration, $138,000. Roger?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 10-0-0. Okay, I think we're on to, do the accommodated whatever order works for you, Frank.
Well, I'll go right down the published agenda if that's
Sure.
easier for the group, I think. So the first one is OPEB. So that stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. It's really all about health insurance for retirees, and it's the obligation that we have, the unfunded obligation for retirees, where the money that we would need to pay their health care in the year that it's due, is it all funded for all of the years that there are people out there? So it's called an unfunded liability. We've put together a program, I don't know, I think it's like 8 years ago, I've forgotten, 6 or 8 years ago.
2013.
Okay, and we put together a financing program on our own initiative to begin to deal with catching up with the unfunded liability, and that's what this schedule is all about, is we have an annual payment that we make into it, and it escalates every year by 9.3%. That percentage in that payment was actuarially calculated, back almost a decade ago now, so that at the end of something like a 30-year period, some bracket, and I believe it was 30 years originally, which is the maximum actuarial hangover you could have to pay off your mortgage on this. It's not really a mortgage, but it's a little bit like that. And that's what gave us these numbers. So we're just following the plan. Occasionally, in some years, we've superfunded this. We would pay the 9.3% off the base number and would add in $500,000 or something to try to kind of goose it up a little bit. We haven't done that lately, but we're still pretty much on plan. The subcommittee voted in favor of doing this according to the program, and at some point we'll get another actuarial report in another year, I guess, and we'll take a look again at how we're doing. So, the actuaries say this is what should happen under all these assumptions, many of which, who knows, and then you get what really happened, and then you sort of run it through the blender again every once in a while and see, based on what really happened and what you thought was going to happen, what do we need to do, where are we going? So far, we're doing okay, and it's remarkable that we can keep up with, $1 million a year to put into this, and we'll eventually get there, but there's a long ways to go. So we voted 2-0-0 in favor of the plan.
This is the off year for the OPEB report, or actuarial report?
The actuarial report, they're actually starting to work on it now. It was
It comes out in December
December
this year.
31st for '22, so we'll get something somewhere in July or August, if we're lucky, maybe September.
Okay,
Right.
thank you. Anything for, I forgot to mention Gary Giannino, our treasurer collector, is here also. Anything additional on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I would say is we're following the plan. As the committee knows, it's a pretty big escalator, 9.3% a year. I think this is the first year that our budgetary payment went over $1 million. So that'll be the big concern for us as a group going forward. When does that number become difficult for us to accommodate? Fortunately, the plan can be flexible, and we'll continue to work that to make sure that we're not ignoring our long-term liabilities, but we certainly don't want it to become an excessive burden to the overall operating budget either. So we'll have to keep an eye on that moving forward.
Great.
Yeah. Probably should point out, so this is voluntary. There's no law that says we have to do this. But in terms of good housekeeping and financial soundness and eventualities, it's really the kind of program you need. And different communities have done different things that go from nothing to what the special tax program I think that Wellesley put in to pay for it more quickly. It was like I forget what it's called.
Bonding?
Pardon?
You're talking about where some communities have bonded the liability?
No. I'll come back to it later. There's a special tax that they put in place for like 5 years to superfund it.
Also, this supports our bond rating being.
Yeah, I mean, the healthier we are as a community financially, the better off we are across the board.
We had a bond meeting this morning with Standard & Poor's and they asked about it, so.
Good. Did they like what they heard?
They did.
I guess we're doing the right thing. I recommend you approve this.
Let's keep doing it.
We need a good bond rating because we have to borrow a lot of money in the years to come.
Other questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All right, this is for the OPEB budget of $1,018,430.
$1,881,000.
Read it again.
430.
I'd like to start over again. Did I read that off wrong?
That's what the backup says.
81, not 18, but.
Yeah.
I have it as
It's
$1,018,000.
$1,018,430.
Are you seeing a different number somewhere? Because that's
I'm reading it off the cover sheet.
Yeah, the backup is
okay.
backwards.
Oh, just to be clear, the backup was updated. I don't know if this got updated. I agree, you're right. In the updated one, it does say that. But in the scorecard and in the summary, it has 18.
Okay.
So let's find out which one is actually reversed
see that
before we
too.
vote that.
It's $1,018,430.
So we should disregard the narrative.
Yep.
Yeah, the number in the narrative has digits.
Oh, I see what you're looking, okay, yeah. No,
Sorry.
scorecard and cover sheet are correct.
Got it, okay.
Oh, yeah. The narrative has the 18 and 81 mixed up. Okay, it's 18.
Whitney likes to put these little things in to make sure
Yeah.
we're actually
You're
reading.
really testing us these days,
He's
Whitney.
very tricky that way.
Yeah, this year has been very challenging.
Read and weep.
Okay, all right, so, once again, $1,018,430, that's why I read it off, to make sure we're all in agreement.
Correct.
All right, Roger,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Chris Delaney.
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 10-0-0. All right, next is unemployment, Frank.
Okay, unemployment compensation, so, we're self-insured, and we have a pretty good history on what it should cost. It's to our advantage to do this, because if you use the state tax to provide the insurance, it would come out, across the board, we've always found it to be more expensive, and I don't know if we've ever used it, but we self-insure. Teachers, so it's across the whole town. There tends to be more turnover in the labor force in the teaching community, if you think about things like tenure and new teachers and whatnot, and not so much at all in the municipal positions. But in any event, this is to cover the unemployment insurance in the event that somebody does take unemployment. That's really, and we funded it at $100,000 because it's a good-looking number. It's more than what we've seen on average for quite some time. Sometimes we run down in the 70s, sometimes in the 80s. We want it to be big enough that we're not scrambling for, $20,000 for insurance. So that's why we voted 2-0-0 in favor.
Thank you. Before we go on, Ed, did I miss a question from you earlier?
No, I was just saying hi to Chris, who just joined us.
Okay, excellent. Hi, Chris. All right. Administration have anything on unemployment?
No, I think Frank covered all the key components. It's a unique section of law that allows government agencies to be self-employed for this, self-insured for this. So basically, we reimburse the state for any actual claims that they pay out, as opposed to paying a payroll tax on every single employee's earnings, which is substantially more money if we went that route.
And do we insure to put a cap on that, or?
Pardon me?
Do we have insurance that puts a cap on our
No,
liability?
there's no stop loss for this program.
Okay. So, stop losses, don't let people go.
Well, we're a pretty stable community.
Very good. Okay.
I think paying unemployment is still cheaper than continuing to pay the employees.
Fair enough. Have any different budgets?
Not the final word.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All right, this is unemployment for $100,000.
100 even.
Doug, you can get into the game too.
You can't mix this one up.
Roger, do you agree?
Okay, Roger.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
Chris Delaney.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
And Chris Campbell now. I think I heard a yes there. Okay, good. Brad.
Yes.
Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. That's 11-0-0. Next is town insurance workers' comp accommodated account, Frank.
Okay, so this is going to take a little bit of discussion, I think. If you look at what's in town insurance, there's a whole bunch of things. The casualty insurance is where we've had the pricing is just going up. And so you see a 12%, I think it's 12 something increase. We have a couple of years of, claims, pretty significant claims. And so your premium gets whacked for that until you work that off the books. I think we'll work that off in another year. But the other problem is it's a thin marketplace for carriers. So we don't have to put it out to bid. They did put it out to bid. Didn't do us a whole lot of good. We got solid bids, but the price is up on the casualty insurance significantly. We are utilizing, I keep forgetting the word, when you pay your own damages up to a certain amount.
Deductibles?
Yeah, deductibles. We take a pretty significant deductible. They did a cost-benefit analysis of if we jack the deductible up more, how much would it lower the premium? And of course, at some point, you have to ask yourself, if the building catches on fire, how much is it going to, how big you want your deductible to be? So we've got a balance there, and that's where it's at. I don't know if there's a whole lot more to say about this. Am I missing stuff on this one that matters? I don't think so.
No, I think you covered the main things is, we have, like you said, a couple hard years, but one of those years should be falling off in our 5-year look back. And the other thing that we can't control is the market is just out of control nationally. I mean, a lot of people are just saying premiums are 10% a given every year going up, so it's tough to keep up with.
We should get in the insurance business. All right. Any questions?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All right, this is town insurance for $1,364,219.
Correct.
Great. Roger.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
Chris Delaney.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Chris Campbell. Brad.
Yes.
Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. That's 11-0-0. Next is the accommodated account for financial services.
Okay,
Frank.
financial services. This one's pretty straightforward. Every year, when you close out your municipal year, you have an audit done. You audit all your books, and you kind of tally everything up. I think the free cash certification might come out of that as well. It does not, okay. Well, anyway, we close our books, and that's around 40,000, maybe a little bit more, that costs us.
We close our own books. It's primarily the audit.
The audit of that.
Financial audit that we're required to have.
Right, but it's about a $40,000 fee. I think it was 43, something like that.
43 was year-to-date.
Okay, so the motion or the request is for 60,000, and the reason is because back maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we did some other audits, and we wanted to use, you know, the auditing services that we had on board. We did some for schools, I think, for sure. And so we put some extra money in that just to have it, so that if during the course of the year, there's something internally that just we want an audit on, we've got some money to do it and someone to work with the services there. So that's why it's $60,000. You know, chances of using it every year, that extra money, are probably not high, but it goes back to free cash, and we figured it's smarter, and I think the administration feels that way, to budget it rather than not. So that's why it's 60,000. Is that fair enough? Yes. Can't buy Coca-Cola with it.
Is the regular school audit covered within the school budget, or?
The schools are part of the overall town's audit.
Okay, it's all together with the town then?
Yes.
Okay.
We probably failed to mention that too. The insurance is actually town and school insurance
Yeah,
as well.
it is.
Any questions?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, this is financial services for $60,000.
Correct.
Roger?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Chris Campbell? Brad?
Yes.
Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 11-0-0.
So, Chris, you're really quiet. It's hard to hear you at all.
I'm checking for his thumbs up there. The next budget is Medicare accommodated account.
Medicare, piece of cake. Pay up and shut up. For everybody that's on your payroll that's in Medicare, we pay a 1.45% tax against their compensation. And it's townwide, I believe, correct? What makes it go up? Well, salaries make it go up, hiring makes it go up. That's basically it. And we estimate what it'll be, because you don't know exactly what your payroll is gonna look like. You know, month to month you might, but, you know, 12 months out, you don't really. And they estimated it at about 5% increase, and that's what we approved. And it sort of makes sense if we look at all the COLAs and some of the hiring and longevity and steps and everything. You know, we're somewhere in that range for sure. So that's their ballpark to cover it. And it's for, I don't even remember the amount, $1,389,291, ballparked at a 5% increase.
And I think Whitney also had a narrative that employees hired before a certain date didn't have to pay into it, but so as they drop off and get
Yeah,
replaced.
It's like in the 80s or something, right?
It goes back to, they're pretty much rolled off,
Okay.
yeah.
And so, as public employees, we have to pay Medicare, but we don't have to pay Social Security for payroll taxes.
Correct.
Right, but, right. Medicare is federal law, I believe.
Correct.
Right.
Any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you.
It's non-negotiable, right? You can't call up the IRS and get a better
You
rate.
better bet up the legal budget.
Hard to change. All right.
But it does cover retirees. So they're not in medical coverage of retirees.
If they take Medicare, it covers everybody,
Right.
actives and retireds,
Right, so
right?
that's one piece we don't have to budget for in OPEB.
True.
We get them on Medicare.
Do we have any requirement for people to go on Medicare? Or inducement?
65 is the, you have to accept Medicare.
Yeah.
Unless you're on an HSA plan, you can't have an HSA plan and be on Medicare. So.
Okay. Okay, we did have a motion. this is Medicare for $1,389,291.
Correct.
Roger,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Chris Delaney,
Yes.
Doug. Yes. Chris Campbell. Brad,
Yes.
Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 11-0-0. Last accommodated account is Middlesex Retirement. This one is in other accounts.
Right.
Right.
Okay, just give me a, so you asked Gary to get some data for us, were you able to do that, Gary?
Yeah, I sent.
Yes, he sent an email.
I did.
Okay, I didn't see it, I just didn't get to it.
I can just report that, just so everyone has it.
It was a little bit late, it was about 6:45.
Okay,
In 2019, there's 373 retired participants. In December 2021, that went up to 396. And then active participants, which includes current employees, I assume,
Yes.
was in 2019 was 564. That increased to 588 in 2021.
yeah, so it's a pretty big pool. So what this is all about, for people listening in, anyone that might be unfamiliar with it, Burlington municipal employees are in the Middlesex County Retirement Program. Basically, the way it's supposed to work is that all the employees contribute to it in their regular paychecks at an 11% garnish. The problem is that if you go back even probably 15 years, but certainly 30 years, the amount of money that was being taken in to fund this program was insufficient to meet the retirement, the eligible retirement amounts. It was a huge shortfall countywide. So a program was put together similar to what OPEB is all about, is to fund the unfunded liability by taxing all the communities for their employees' share to catch up. And that was recalculated a while ago, and we're on now the current schedule with I think a roll-off date of, is it
2036.
36?
Right.
Yeah, 1936. So whether we make that or not, we don't know, but the assessment that we've got is based on how many people you've got on it, the numbers that John just read off, and what the liability requires you to pay into it in order to hit the roll-off in another 10 years or something. So that's our assessment, and there's really nothing you can negotiate there. We do have representation on the board. The plan that we're in, we have full visibility on. We had a full review of it about a month ago. It's a very active, well-managed plan that has a lot of good earnings, similar to what our OPEB has been, but it's not crazy wild. In other words, it's taxpayers' money they're playing with. So we believe that fund has been pretty beneficial to the retirement program. And that's our assessment, it's $13 million. The increase, I don't honestly know, but I would speculate the increase is coming from two things. One is the earnings of the fund. If it earned less, then they want to try to stay on program, so you got to pull in more money. It's really not what we do with OPEB, but they probably have to do that here. And the other thing is that the size of the pool isn't completely known. People die, people come in, some can come in earlier than expected. So the pool moves around a little bit. It's recalculated periodically, and that's our fee.
Would you like to add anything to that?
Just that this one is required, unlike the OPEB payment.
Right.
Is the current amount that employees put in, is that considered to be enough to cover the total cost for those employees going forward, in theory?
The actuaries tell us that the most recent employees, which is most of the people that work here now, which, as Frank mentioned, get a total of 11% taken out of pay. The actuaries tell us that person will essentially fully fund their own retirement. I don't know if I can test that theorem, but over time, there were people, the assessment was, the garnish, as Frank calls it, was 5%, you know, for the people that were here a while ago, and then it went to 6, 8.
Didn't even come close.
It's been raised over the years, and what the actuaries tell us is that 11%er covers most of their own pension.
So in theory, in our 30-ish years, we'll stop making these payments and it'll be self-sustaining is the
We
idea,
would just be paying for the current year's cost, the normal cost of the plan.
which would be coming from the employees withholding essentially then?
I think there's always been a town component to it.
Okay.
So.
So it's, all right, understood. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Cheyenne?
Do employees have the option to pay more into their pension program, or?
They do not.
It's a fixed benefit.
Thank you.
Other questions? No.
Is this on, so I'm comparing to OPEB, we know, we're built in with a 9% increase every year. Is there a predictable percentage increase? Are they building like that, or are they doing it differently?
For the town, it's averaged about between 6 to 7%. And again, it's based on the amount of employees, how the payments are going along. And similar to OPED, every 2 years they do actuarial results. This was done in 21, so it's up the off year for what the town does. But it is pretty constant.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, you'd like to have no increase. You'd like it to be level funded. Our OPEB program was intentionally set up not to be level funded. We wanted to grow into this tariff. I don't know how this is set up, actually.
This is right now currently about 54% funded.
But the increase, are they anticipating an increase just to meet the program, or is that because of unforeseen circumstances?
It's to meet the program. So, and again, the actuarial tables don't necessarily match in reality, but
Right.
we've been pretty consistent to town's contribution.
Right.
Some other towns have jumped up and down.
Roger?
In years past, we've actually had a report and a presentation about the status of the retirement program. And
Right.
Years of the year of the actuarial, it's not every year, right?
It's every 2 years.
We
Right.
could
We
certainly
could do
invite
that.
them.
we could do it, whenever they do their next report, it would be good to hear it.
Right, we could have a, you know,
We could have a presentation,
Presentation
you know,
from the
at
board.
any time, you know, it doesn't have to be before town meeting. It's very informative. I think it's usually a pretty good eye-opener. It's actually a very positive plan that, if not for the sins of the past, it will be costing the town about 4.5% of payroll. When you consider a private company, they have to pay into Social Security, the 6.9. They have to offer some sort of 401k with a match. So it's actually a really good plan. The problem was when the plan started, nobody did. They did it pay as you go, so they sort of reimbursed for the benefits that would be paying out as opposed to setting some money aside for the future. But the actual cost of the current plan with the unfunded liability from the past aside is approximately 4.5% of payroll, which, again, if you compare that to what a private sector employer may have to pay out for its employees between the Social Security and a 401k match is you know, pretty good return, and for a very good plan, retirement plan as well.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, so this Middlesex retirement, which is $13,403,482.
correct.
Roger?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Lost him.
Oh, did we lose him?
Chris?
Is that CH, I'm assuming?
I think so.
Okay. No Chris Campbell at the moment. Brad?
Yes.
Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 10-0-0.
Yes, you didn't call me.
I didn't.
No.
Oh, would you like to say yes?
I would like to say yes.
Thank you.
Chris
All
is
right,
back.
now it's 10-0-0. Oh, Chris, you're back. How would you like to vote? Very good. That's 11-0-0. that's all the accommodated accounts for this week, correct, Frank?
That's all the same, yes.
Right.
There's health insurance and debt service and negotiated settlements to go
We're for
in a couple of weeks, yeah.
our next
Yeah,
meeting on this. Okay, great.
so that's the end of central admin for now, and
Yes.
brings us to the treasurer.
So that brings us to treasurer collector, which is account 145.
Correct.
Have a report on that, Frank.
I do.
Excellent.
We like our treasury. They send out the bills. It's $745,826, $745,000, 3.66% increase. Gary may want to say, I'm sure he probably does, a little bit more about this, but there's been some really good things going on. First of all, structurally in his office, where he's been trying to use the personnel that he's got, backfill things that change, and structure the apartment so that he has more depth. Titles match up with jobs, jobs match up with titles. And also one position's been taken out of the union and put into the AMP. That gives him a little bit more, I think, continuity inside of the way the department should work. That's the first thing that struck me. I think it's really good. And secondly, there are a lot of moving parts in this office. It's not just tax bills. It's a whole bunch of things. If you break it up into big buckets, there are different kinds of taxes, from the excise tax to the real estate tax to the water bill, and then you've got the whole health insurance side of the house, which they're also responsible for. I would say so if you look at the spreadsheet and look at the different pieces, it's all pretty straightforward. There's no big surprise in this. The overall increase was 366. It was really driven by steps and salaries. And that's, I think I'd let Gary talk to whatever else he'd like, but there is a lot in here. The health insurance, management of that is a lot of work. Also, Gary is on the board of the Middlesex Retirement, and he has a stipend for that to represent us to the Middlesex Retirement Program. So we have good representation there and active work going on to look at what's happening and that sort of thing. I don't know. I really don't have a whole lot more to say on this.
Like that, anything, Gary?
Frank's done a great job of explaining some of
Well,
the
you've
changes
done a lot, yeah.
within the department, and I guess the other thing that we do, other than the collection of the bills, as he mentioned, the benefits, we also have the payroll, which is
Right.
every
Very
week.
important.
Very important.
Everyone likes that.
I will tell you also from what's been going on in the banking world, I just want to let people know the vast majority of our funds are collateralized through an InterFi banking program. We did that about a year and a half ago. So we have taken care of that. I would be remiss if I said I was 100%. I did think one bank I had under control had forwarded some of the documents, so I'm working on that right now, but that's not even close to what the dollars we have. And we do meet with most of our funds from investment. Our trust funds are done with a private company. I don't do that internally. And as Frank also mentioned, our OPEB money is similar to the Middlesex County. We did have that gentleman, Frank, who came and John was there, and Frank, you were there. And I was very happy as I dove into those numbers 2 years ago to see that group, I think, is top-notch as far as that's concerned. So.
Yeah, you also manage our bonding program, bands, bond
Yes.
council.
Yes, and we're in the midst of that. That's right now. So we're looking at that. I'm sure Paul's mentioned that in the past about the PFAS program. We got under the State Clean Waters Act, so we're working, it's a timing issue right now when that's gonna be issued versus we do have the ban that's due on April 28th, so we're working on that right now to see if we can even that off. We had a meeting yesterday with someone, and they're hoping to push that through to help us with our bond costs. If we don't have to rebond, we can advance maybe some of the funding from the Clean Water Act. Will save the town some money. And that loan is at a much discounted rate, so.
When you say the funds are collateralized, are you saying that we have additional insurance beyond what FDIC would cover?
Right, FDIC covers $250,000, the Interfi program we're with. So if it was Leader Bank, they'll keep $250,000, and then they pay these other banks throughout the country that are in the system to guarantee up to $250,000. So, which is the FDIC limit. So, we're in the past they would collateralize. I should have used the Interfi is the term name they're using now, through some of the bonds that banks held, but banks are now using this program. So we are covered.
So everything other than a few details is covered then?
Correct.
Okay.
And someone asked me if I checked these other banks, because some of them are in Iowa, Idaho, Nebraska, they're all over the country. And I said, well, I'm within the FDIC limit of 250. I really don't see the need to dive deep into those banks. We do get a reporting of all the banks we are using for rating, and Paul and I were talking about that. Whitney, you were in that room too. It's somewhat historical. I went back and looked at what just happened with some of the banks, and as of December, they had a clean rating, so
They all look good until they don't.
that's right.
Fun and games till you run out of beer.
Right. Poke in the eye.
One thing I didn't mention under the, it's under consulting, I think, but anyway, we added another $2,000 to Munis Services. We're upgrading tax and title application software, and I think you wanted to make sure that we had good coverage there. So we added $2,000 to that budget. It may persist, it may not. We'll see how that goes. Other than that, there really wasn't much funding change, but there's a lot going on.
Any questions for Gary? Roger?
Sorry, random, are you still planning any office renovations, and are you still buying adding machines?
You didn't ask for one this year, did you?
We put some different petitions in the department. That was about it. Didn't buy any adding machines. But,
Well, it's helpful if you clean the stuff out of the spreadsheets that are not relevant anymore.
right.
Always got $0 on.
We're trying to we try to scan as many documents, not copy them, not print them. So we're using less file cabinets. And we like to think we're helping somewhat in the cost of paper by not doing that. But the sending out the bills, those obviously first-class stamp now is 63 cents. But our banking, through our RFP about a year and a half ago, we're not incurring any costs there. We have a lockbox system for recurring payments coming in, so things that go in the mail go straight to a lockbox, and we don't get charged for that. Where in the past we were paying a fee. And online banking, we're continuing to look at options there. Right now, you can pay any of your bills, do it through your bank online, and it's 40 cents. Is a convenience fee, or you could pay a credit card, but that's a minimum of 2.95%. Of it. Once it gets past it, it's up to 2.99%. So we tell people, and we've seen a large increase in the last year. The bill that's going out now, which will be people will receive in the next couple of days, will have an insert in there talking about online payment. So.
Would electronic billing be an option that could make sense for a town, or?
I'm not sure the state law, Massachusetts would allow that right
They
now.
haven't caught up to this century.
Requires us to mail a paper bill, so.
There's a lot of, as you get into the Mass General laws, there's a lot of things that I think are outdated, but we have to follow Mass General law, so.
Sure to warm up our fax machines.
Two questions. Just to be clear, there's still no convenience fee if I just bring up my check downstairs and hand it in, correct?
Correct, other than the gas that it would take to go from your house to here and. You walk.
I walk, yeah. Most of the time I walk. And
Very healthy.
second, I normally am here for the meeting, so it's very convenient for me to just bring it up.
Right.
But, yeah, it's the cheapest way for taxpayers to pay their bill. Or they could just drop it off in the drop box outside.
That's right. They can drop it off at the drop box anytime. In the morning when we come in, we have, the boxes are emptied by I think our custodian, and those come into us. Those would take probably a day by the time we process them. The online banking is the quickest. As soon as you hit that button, we pick it up the next morning. So.
And my second question is, out of the excise tax adjustments, how much interest have you paid out this year?
How much interest did we pay?
So there's a line item for $100 where if the
Oh, the interest refund?
Yeah.
I don't have that number. It's not material at all. It was.
I understood. It's a curious question, yeah.
I just haven't checked that. I mean,
Okay.
Just a quick question. The contracted services jumped significantly. Is there a specific?
We're going through, as Frank mentioned, we're going through an upgrade in our Munis system, which is the software system, financial, some of the departments use it for other aspects. It's our major part, our payroll runs through that. The system was last updated 7 years ago, 8 years ago. My concern, and some of the changes in my department, the individual who had the most institutional knowledge on the existing Munis is retiring. So I put that extra $2,000 in if we need help from Munis themselves, or if I could bring back that employee as a contract for a couple of hours. I'm not sure I'm going to need it. When I did this budget 2 months ago, I had a lot less knowledge about this upgrade. So far, we've been testing it, and I think it will go well, but it was more or less of an insurance if something goes wrong.
But that's the $2,000, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so the dollar amount is actually not a lot.
It's not a lot of money, it's just a big jump.
That's what happens, yeah.
Kind of caught my eye.
As we roll over our taxes each year, we've used someone from the software, Munis, and a consultant to help make sure that gets done correctly.
One thing I skipped over, and I didn't mean to, is the payroll. So you're doing payroll weekly?
We do it weekly for the town and bi-weekly for the schools.
Schools, so that's right. You know, Gary's very aware of the fact that if it became, you know, every other week or even longer, it would be significant less, you know, savings in terms of putting out the payroll. But there's a reason for that. Some people really are very comfortable with getting the physical check and getting it weekly, and we have to think about everybody. So I don't see us changing that in a hurry.
Neither do I,
Right,
unfortunately.
I knew
But some
you'd
of
say
is
that.
contractual. What we were able to do through the negotiations, I believe back in 18, 19, is get the employees onto direct deposit. So, which was a major step. I think I have 5 town employees right now who are still getting a physical check, and by contract, if they were employed before 19, they could do that. And I think in the schools, we have 16 employees left. One of our goals, especially with this upgrade, is employee self-service, which would mean any employee would be able to, through their email address, go in and see their payroll, and we would eliminate some printing of remittances. Even though they're on direct depositors right now, we're still giving them a non-negotiable sheet. So I looked at Paul because he's constantly asking me when I'm going to have that done. So.
Any day now.
Any day. It's with this amount of people we have now on direct deposit, and with the upgrade to Munis, I was sort of waiting until we got this upgrade, because I didn't want to start training some of our people and then saying with the upgrade, we're going to change it. And it's going to be an education for the employees also. We're going to have to gather people's email addresses. Or not, they're going to have to be able to log into Munis, I should say, into our software system for payroll and get their information. So.
Roger.
So the Munis component for that was in the MIS budget? Is there a new?
Yes. Yeah. The cost has been appropriated for buying that module. We just never pulled the trigger on it because we weren't using it.
So how, is it a self-service module or is it payroll specific?
It's a self-service for payroll, employee self-service, yes.
Because I've heard of self-service parts of Munis, but for other things, so.
There is that. I spoke to Joe from the IS department, and that's not something I'm looking for to do right now, where my goal is employee self-service, and also looking to make ACH payments to our vendors versus writing checks. And I've talked to the town accountant, Julian, and that's something we're gonna move into also. So instead of paying our checks once a week, we do our warrant and send checks out. And it's, again, time and cost to do that, so.
All right, thanks. I only ask because I've spotted a couple of places in town where we have different support for employees getting onboarded and pay, reporting hours. I know the rec department has a different system that they use for a lot of the part-time people, and I just sort of wondered what was available, if there was any consistency across the town that was worthwhile looking into.
Some of the individual departments have a payroll gathering for information. That has to be transferred from the payroll clerk to the department into Munis. Again, with our upgrade, we're going to see if we can connect it. I know in the computer they like to talk about the tube. Connect the interface between that software and Munis that would make it more seamless. So we are looking at that.
Great, it's not really relevant to your budget, but
yeah,
good to see the integration.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. Any further questions? No? Okay. All right, this is the treasurer collector budget of $745,826.
Correct.
Roger.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
Chris Delaney.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Chris Campbell. Brad.
Yes.
Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. That's 11-0-0. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
And getting back to Paul on the ARPA funds question now. What was your question again, Steve?
Could I get a status of how the ARPA funds are being allocated and
Sure.
how much do we still have left?
Round numbers. So the overall plan was to try to, since we got hit with an unexpected bill for the PFAS solution, was to try to save as much of those ARPA funds as we could to apply and not borrow that money. So to keep the capacity on our debt schedule for all the projects that we have forthcoming. So just in round numbers, we started off with 8.5. As you recall, we allocated $500,000 a year for 3 years to replace lost revenue in the budgetary process. So $500,000 per year went in as a revenue source over the past 3 years' budgets. We had set aside $1 million for potential costs of the pandemic. At the time the ARPA funds came, it was still a little bit uncertain as to what the needs may be from the Board of Health, and we wanted to make sure that we were prepared for any changes in the status of the pandemic. None of that money's been spent, so we still have that. And the board has allocated smaller amounts of money to supplement. As you're aware, the WebEx contract came out of there. Primarily, we've increased hours in youth and family service and also with our police social worker. to address sort of a backlog of, people went through a tough time, so we have a backlog at Youth and Family Services, so we supplemented their budget with some additional hours for social workers, and it was a goal of the select board to increase the hours of the social worker that we have working at our police department. So if you consider the 1.5 million is spent, that was the revenue replacement. The sums of money we spent on pandemic-related items such as the social workers, we still have a significant amount of ARPA funds left. Once we're kind of clear on wrapping that up, our intention is to pay down debt. And again, I think our original plan was to think about paying down the PFAS loan that we had to take out to construct that solution. But we were able to get some very favorable financing through the Mass Clean Water Trust, which is what Gary was referring to. It's not necessarily a grant, but very favorable interest rates. So we're considering using that towards the MWRA project, just because that's going to be full interest-bearing debt. So that's a summary of round numbers as to how the select board has allocated the ARPA funds to date.
Thank you.
So just, if I add your numbers up, is that saying you have roughly 6 million left?
I said rough numbers.
In the ballpark? Plus or minus $1 million?
I would say so, yes, off the top of my head.
Okay. Brad?
So Paul, I know your philosophy, long-term philosophy is you don't want to, when there's found money, you don't want to put that toward operating budget. So many of everything else except for the WebEx sounds like those are costs that are going to go away or they're one-time cost. Is the thinking with the WebEx in the MIS operating budget that once we're past COVID, the expectation is we won't be using WebEx anywhere near as much, so our cost will come down? Are you viewing that as a COVID-related cost?
I think that we're aware that WebEx will probably remain, and a virtual component to meetings is very likely to be continued, I think. The legislature sure is bumping up against the deadline, which I think is the end of this week, to extend it, but we are aware that the governor did file a bill. I guess we're waiting on the Senate at this point to act on that, but we think WebEx is going to be something that we continue moving forward. Again, it started coming out at WebEx ARPA at the beginning because, it was a new cost and we hadn't been utilizing that type of product up until that point. So it will have to be paid out of an operating budget moving forward.
But that's the only instance of a potential ongoing cost.
Right. My understanding is we'll have to make an evaluation of the status of Youth and Family Services to see how well they've caught up on the backlog. The police social worker, that was sort of intentional. That was a select board request. So we've picked up a little bit more of that in the operating budget each year and, sort of declined the amount of ARPA funds used. So we've actually worked to build those additional hours into the budget. Okay. So that won't be a hindrance moving forward. But we'll have to take, an evaluation of Youth and Family just to sort of see how they're doing. There's certainly, pandemic was tough on people, so those parts of town government have really seen an uptick in clients.
Was that a part-time ad or a full-time ad for Youth and Family?
Most of the folks there work less than full-time schedules.
Okay.
Roger?
So I'm looking at the scorecard, and remembering in years past, I thought there was a section of it that covered expected revenues. And I was looking for the place where the 500,000, the $500,000 showed up on the income side and looking for the other numbers. Am I just missing that from the scorecard, or are you not offering that anymore?
The scorecard for the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not aware that we ever included revenues on that.
Well, maybe it was during the guideline setting, but I do remember that there was a set of expectations for state revenues in various categories, local revenues, et cetera.
I think
so I wonder where that went.
Yeah, I don't think it was in the scorecard, but I agree. You typically did have a summary of expected income, I think, that
Well, if anybody can track down a copy, I'd be happy for you to refresh my memory on that. 'Cause,
All right.
we deal with expenditures typically over here in terms of what we have to track for you guys, so.
Well, what I'm remembering is that in the scorecard discussion, actually in the scorecard, there was the delta between what the budget was, the part that was, when you picked the percentage of the guideline, the way that you figured out what that number meant, how much you were in the hole, was by comparing it with the expected receipts. Anyway, I'll go find a copy, because I've got stuff
Thank you.
years back.
But Roger's not hallucinating, yeah, we used to get three scenarios, and usually the most dreadful one, we'd be in the hole 1.6, the one where all the departments would be in pain, we'd maybe be in the hole 100, and we would go with the one, we'd be in the hole about 800,000. You remember?
Yeah, I mean, we had eliminated that practice several years ago after the transition between myself and John Petrin. You know, my disdain for that practice came from my days as being the town accountant. You know, we would set budget guidelines with a deficit to work off during the year. And again, as part of those budget guidelines, there were two conservative revenue estimates, I guess you would say. So there were unrealistic revenue estimates that created deficits that we had to work off of. But we changed that practice several years ago to try to give the full, what the tax levy is anticipated to be for this year, which was always sort of the X factor in those different budget scenarios that we worked on. But we haven't done that in several years.
All right, I understand the approach in setting the guideline and trying to come up with the difference, but it'd still be useful to know the anticipated income for the town.
All right, like I say, if you have that document, I'm very interested to see
Oh,
it.
you're just being forgetful, but okay.
Even if they're way conservative, it might.
I think that was sort of in John Denizio's PowerPoint slides in more of a narrative form than a spreadsheet form. Is that the information you're looking for? Or?
Let's move on. If I can't find the paper, then, you know, I've got nothing to say to Paul.
Okay.
No, like I say, I could be misremembering as well, so.
Okay. And just related to what you were saying, when we get to the health insurance, I think that's where there was a fairly detailed accounting.
I'm hoping that Gary can pull together that 1 or 2 page cheat sheet.
If you could make sure that Gary has that, that would be great.
I know, I think he's still working on that, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Right, it's not for a couple weeks, but just,
Right,
if you could just
so
set the expectation that we're
want that.
looking for that, that would
Yes,
be great.
and the one that will be difficult to do is that I don't know how you're gonna try to organize it, is to get a bird's eye view, but with a certain amount of detail of, the current debt service is easy, it's the proposed going forward. We wanna get some idea of, you know, where we're headed over the next 5 would be nice years.
Something that,
That's gonna be difficult, I know.
well, something a little more, a little less,
Readable?
well, I was gonna say a little less fanciful than appears in the town meeting, where it has, you know, things like, you know, a shooting range at the high school, or I'm exaggerating.
No. That would be warrant articles. I'm talking about, you know, major bonded indebtedness stuff.
Yeah, we did a pretty substantial deep dive a couple of years ago. So, again, it's a lot of information, and it's, if you don't work with it a lot, it could be confusing, but it's certainly an area that we're gonna be investing a lot of money in moving forward, and our goal with the debt is to always just to make sure that we can sort of keep it rising on a predictable and steady basis, as opposed to, hey, look, we just borrowed all this money and now debt's going up 1,000%, and now we can't afford to have a, you know, building department anymore. So that's what we try to do over time. As everybody's aware, we do have a lot of, you know, the town's done a pretty good job of catching up on some of the major infrastructure over the last 15 years, but we still have some pretty significant projects ahead of us, and, you know, our projections show that we're gonna have a pretty rapid and steep increase in the debt budget.
So for health insurance, I think we'll have the usual good cheat sheet. Again, you get a good view of who's in it, where the costs are going, why the increase is what it is, the wellness programs, all that stuff. I think for the going forward anticipated debt, I don't know how you'll do it, and just see what you can come up with. But we need to get some idea. You know, to Paul's point, what we want to see is a smoothing function applied so that year on year, the increases look like, yeah, these fit within an operating budget that's growing at, pick your guideline, 3 to 5%. But if you've got a debt that's 20% of your budget and it's growing by 50%, you're going to start to have a little bit of a problem.
Well, and I know you guys are working on this, but understanding what is the target acceptable debt number is obviously kind of important to understand that as part of the big picture.
I think we could give targets probably pretty quickly. We know what we'd like.
Yeah, I mean, for a AAA rated community, it wouldn't be unusual to have an 8% of your budget go towards debt service. We're well below that, and we've been working really hard. Brad, I know you were involved years ago, and we started to invest more of our budget into debt and replacing these infrastructure facilities. But the trick is, even though you may want to get to 8%, how do you get there? It's a slow, gradual climb, so.
And obviously the goal isn't to get to 8%, it's to fund things that we want while staying within the 8%.
Right.
And I think the argument is we probably want more things and we're holding back unnecessarily. Is that the implication of being below the 8%?
No, I'm just talking about the realistic things that we feel as though are next. We got Fox Hill coming up, potentially Fox Hill, Pine Glen, not sure how that's going to go. We have a police station, and I think we're all aware that we need to do something with the high school over time. And again, it's one thing to be at 4% of budget and say, hey, 8% is perfectly fine with the debt rating agencies, but to actually allocate those budget dollars to get from 4 to 8 is a significant undertaking without impacting other services, other departments, et cetera.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think there's an underpinning to this. There's an undergird that says if you're running a municipality of some caliber, some size, and even though we're only 11 square miles, this is a pretty significant amount of services and infrastructure in Burlington. I mean, it's not quite a city, but it's a lot more than a small town. So what you'll find out is in that category, what numbers will say is that over time, everything ages. Over time, everything needs replacement, modernization, and upgrades, and that costs money. And so what you'll get is sort of an idea of how much you're devoting on a regular basis to reinvesting, refurbing, modernizing. And if you're not using part of your operating budget on kind of a sustained basis to do that, and if you're using too much, then you're going to get yourself into a taxation problem. If you're using too little, you could drive yourself into a drought of keeping up, and you'll get too far behind on your infrastructure. And I think both are pretty serious problems, and we're trying to, thread that needle. I don't think we're too far behind, but I don't think we're way ahead of the game either on infrastructure. We're kind of keeping up, and so what does it cost to keep up is the $64,000 question. It's more like the $200,000 question. And the number seems to be somewhere between, 7 and 8%, but that's what we got to figure out. But that's what you're looking at.
And some of that's reflected on the capital, 10-year capital plan. We don't forecast out 20 years, but.
Well, the needs should all be reflected on that, absolutely, and that's, that's a little bit amorphous, but, in theory, you should be able to pick off the 10-year plan, the 5-year goals, and the 5-year goals should start mapping into the close-in bonded versus not bonded and debt service if everything were working perfectly. The really hard part about that is that prices are so unstable. Right. Who the hell knows what a high school is going to cost in 5 years? Does anybody? I sure don't.
More than what it will today.
Greater than.
Ed?
That was my comment. The only thing we know for certain is that it's just going to get worse. So I would like to inject the comment that pushing off your infrastructure will cause a problem that will beget also the first problem, that we get into a debt problem because we're just gonna have to do the investment later and it's gonna cost a lot more.
Yep.
So it's that happy balance. And that's what we're trying to figure out on this whole debt service thing. I know you guys work on this all the time, and the committee would like to just, understand that a little better.
No, without a doubt, it's, again, it's, we're looking at substantial increases in debt service just for what we're doing right now without high school. So, we got a ways to go on that.
Is it worthwhile putting an agenda item in to discuss the capital needs and debt service going forward? Is that, well, I guess we have that on already.
Well, yeah, I'm hoping that
I guess as part of that discussion, can
Yeah.
we see a better look at what we think the realistic capital items are coming up? What you're thinking about bonding, so to speak?
Yeah, like I say, if you think of the next items, we have the Fox Hill, Pine Glen, and the police station, and then we're gonna have to start doing some work on the high school. So those are the locked in stone, I think, that we're gonna be looking at over the next 10 years.
Okay, all right, well, it would be good to see what that implies in terms of where you think the debt service goes.
Going way up.
Yes, okay, perhaps slightly more detail. All right. Do we have anything else for Paul?
Just a quick question. When we were talking about the high school, are we planning like a demolish and rebuild or renovation?
That'll be, a decision that is made further down the line. I think there's differing opinions out there. I think one of the problems is the school's very well built, as we all know. It's pretty solid. Just may not be quite as functional as people would like it to be now. So that's been, part of our problem in dealing with the state to try to get some assistance with that, is they come out and look at the school. The school department does a very good job maintaining their buildings. And so it's considered pretty suitable, but it may not just be suitable to modern educational techniques and whatnot. So I know that Superintendent Conti has some plans to try to, for the school department to get their arms a little bit better around the high school and what are some of the options. And he's actually come up with a lot of great ideas. Just, throwing things against the wall, see what may stick. But they want to take a closer look just to see what are the true options. Is it a total rebuild that's the better option? Is it take the functional areas of that building and build new around it? Is it, he's got a lot of great ideas. So I think that they'll be moving forward with an article that will sort of put that into a more concrete format so people can sort of, get their arms around the scope of that project.
A lot of discussion in school committee meetings to, if you want to dive into that one.
Yeah, they want to hire a firm to do a real breadth, depth evaluation.
If last night's school committee meeting will go over a lot of the details of some of the capital warrant articles and plus a lot of the operating budgets. It's a good meeting to get a lot of information from. It's on BCAT, so.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Our final item is the approval of minutes. I realize those went out just today. Have people had a chance to look at those?
Yeah, they look good to me.
No,
Any comments?
unfortunately.
No? Do we want to vote, or do we want to take another week to look at them?
I'd vote.
Right, okay. All right, let's vote then. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve minutes.
Thank you.
Whatever date it was.
This is the March 15th minutes.
Published.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Roger.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Steve.
Steve
He just left off. Nerve. Ruins everything.
It took too long.
Frank.
Yes.
Chris Delaney.
I have to abstain, I'm sorry.
Oops. Doug.
Yes.
Chris Campbell. Yeah. Thank you. Brad.
Yes.
Cheyenne.
Abstain.
Chair votes yes. That's 802. All right, do we have anything else for tonight that we did not cover? Brad?
I forgot to give a shout out to the MIS guys while they were here. Perhaps this will be, the topic will be brought up next week, but there are new servers over in there's a project to put in new servers over in the police department, and our town MIS team was involved in that and went above and beyond on making recommendations and providing guidance on that project. So if they watch the replay, which I'm sure all department heads love to do, they can receive the pat on the back now, so.
In the permanent record, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, just for next week, it's Public Safety Week, so we have fire, police, and emergency management services. So that's what we have coming up. And then the following week, we have a whole lot of items, and we'll cover the leftover accommodated accounts that Frank did not do tonight.
But David will be back.
And David will be here too, so it will be most excellent.
He better be.
All right, I believe we're ready to adjourn. Any
Motion to
objections?
adjourn.
Second.
Done.